This is an extract from the Leader Coronavirus Daily podcast by the Evening Standard and hosted by me, David Marsland. To hear the whole thing, search for it on your podcast provider. 60 years ago, a book was published that would go on to be hailed as one of the great American novels and influence discussion on race relations all over the world.
When he gave us our air rifles, Atticus wouldn't teach us to shoot. Uncle Jack instructed us in the rudiments thereof. He said Atticus wasn't interested in guns. Atticus said to Jem one day, "I'd rather you shot at tin cans in the backyard, but I know you'll go after birds. Shoot all the blue jays you want if you can't hit 'em, but remember it's a sin to kill a mockingbird." That was the only time I heard Atticus say it was a sin to do something.
Bonnie Christian spoke to black author Lauren Wilkinson, whose bestseller American Spy was named by Barack Obama as one of his favourite books of last year.
It's the 60th anniversary of Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. It's managed to enjoy this enduring popularity. Why do you think that is?
I think that Scout is a very compelling character, and I think that it's a very American thing to use a young female character to be the lens through which to look at a serious story about racial inequality. I think that makes a lot of sense for the way that Americans like to tell stories. You know, she's very palatable. It's an uncomfortable political story, but we get it through someone who a lot of Americans really, really identified with or feel they could.
And do you think this novel holds up or resonates in today's world, particularly right now against the backdrop of the Black Lives Matter movement?
I never really was that big of a fan of it, to be totally honest with you. I was assigned it in 7th grade, didn't read it, got a D in that class because I didn't read it. Then I finally read it as an adult, and I didn't, because of what I was saying, because it does feel that it needs to tell the story about race in a way that's mediated by a young white girl. And I didn't ever feel that I needed to have the story told to me that way. Sure, it holds up, and I think that a lot of people really love it for reasons of nostalgia and because it's a great novel of itself. But there are a lot of really great novels that also tackle similar themes that I think are just as valuable, if not more so. Contemporary ones that were, published at around the same time by Black authors.
So you mentioned there that there's plenty of Black writers from that time who depict similar themes who would be worth reading. Are there any that stand out to you?
Well, just things that grapple with race in a different way that are around the same time. Just off the top of my head, Another Country by James Baldwin. I think that was published in 1962, so maybe 2 years after. A book I always recommend to people because it's one of my favorites is Passing by Nella Larsen. Way earlier, 1929, but earlier, and it feels very present. Feels like the way that it's tackling race could have been written much more recently. Invisible Man. There's a bunch of works from around that time that were really doing interesting things. And today, I have a couple of friends who've written really great books that I always think people should check out. Jamel Brinkley wrote a book of short stories called A Lucky Man that really discusses, Black life in America. My friend Nafisa wrote Heads of the Colored People, also a book of short stories that both of their work is just really exciting to me.
I wanted to talk to you about your own book, American Spy, that'll be released next week. It follows the story of a Black woman working in a white male-dominated world. What would you hope for readers to take from the themes that you raise in the book?
The book is written set in around 1985, but I think it's still very relevant and modern. I used the past to talk about social and racial dynamics that I feel are very present today. So most people who read the book, I think, pick up on that. So I feel, I did what I set out to do,
Search for the Leader Coronavirus Daily on any podcast provider to hear more from the podcast.